What's going on, everybody? My name is Brock Lambert. Welcome to episode 3 of the 21 Plays podcast. Today, we talked to Coach Rob Carswell, one of my former Pop Warner coaches, and you'll find out more about him during the interview. Now, let me get this out the way. I understand the audio quality of this interview is not the best, and I'm trying to work on it with the software that I was using. It wasn't the clearest, and I'm going to try to get that fixed. And also, I know that there's some vibrations and all that in the background. My phone was going off and I just didn't think to turn it off. So I do apologize for that. Just stick with me and we'll make sure it's better next time. Also, make sure you go follow him on his social medias and make sure you tell him I sent you. And without further ado, let's get right into the interview. Welcome, everybody, to the 21 Plays podcast. My name is Brock Lambert. This is episode 3. Today with me, I have Coach Rob Carswell. How are you doing, Coach?
Doing pretty good, man. I appreciate you having me on. Real honor to be on here.
Yeah, you're always welcome, man. You're always welcome. Now, before we get into anything else, just want to let you know Coach Rob is my former Pop Warner coach. He coached me in Tiny Mites and Mighty Mites. I don't know. He coached me for a while, so he's also a former Clemson safety, and he went to the Senior Bowl in 2001, was drafted by the Chargers in 2000, and is a current teacher at Lake Carolina. Now, Coach, let's go ahead and get into the first question. Let's start off back in high school. What was the recruiting process like for you?
Okay, yeah, the recruiting process was it was an honor, Brock, man. I'm gonna be honest. That's something that you work for, and you want to go through that recruiting process. And after I got an older brother and watching him go through that recruiting process, I couldn't wait for my turn. So on the the recruiting process back then was very different than what it is today. But we had an opening day where coaches could finally contact you. And literally from 7 o'clock that morning all the way till about 11 o'clock at night, I received phone calls from schools from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. And so, I narrowed my choices down. And really, coming out of high school, I was a big-time Notre Dame fan. And back then, Notre Dame was one of the premier schools. They're kind of okay today, but back then, you say you're going to Notre Dame, everybody kind of took notice. And so I was a big Notre Dame fan growing up, so I knew that's the school I was going to go to. And then really I was just going to pick 4 other schools to go visit, just to have some fun and just kind of experience the recruiting process. So I ended up going to Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida State, Tennessee, and Nebraska. And then something happened on my visit at Clemson, and I ended up committing to Clemson. But that process was really fun. It was a real honor getting a chance, and really that was the first time I ever flew in an airplane, was flying to those schools. And, you get there and they kind of showing you what those programs have to offer, but it was a real fun time.
Yeah, and you talk about how something just clicked at Clemson. How did you know that was the school, and do you know exactly what that thing was for you that just said, that's where I want to spend 4 years?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Brock, man, I was a big family guy coming out, and, I grew up in Atlanta, and Notre Dame was probably 13 hours away. And, my parents, they told me that if you commit to Notre Dame, we're going to support you, but we wouldn't be able to come up for a lot of your games. And my family had a big-time tradition where after every football game, we would all go out to eat as a family. And that's something that I didn't want to lose. So when I went to Clemson, Clemson had a lot of the things that I was looking for. A couple of things that I did is I wrote down some of the things that I'm looking for. I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to graduate in 4 years. So I wanted that school to really focus on some academics. And then, too, to be honest with you, I was looking for a school that could help me get to the NFL. I wanted to see guys in my position getting drafted, and I saw Brian Dawkins coming out. I got a chance to meet him on a visit. Dexter McCleon, I got a chance to meet him on a visit. And so that was important to me, too. And then something that wasn't so close that my parents could just roll up on me and knock on my door. So Clemson was about an hour and a half away. But just the family environment down there, with the coaches, with the players, the community, and, of course, the crazy fans. You dream about that running down that hill, seeing people with their shirt off and the face paint on and got the wigs on, going crazy. And then they were a program with a great football tradition. So it all just came together. And really, it had to be something special because I grew up being a Notre Dame fan. And I still, to this day, have the Notre Dame scholarship that they offered me, and they faxed to my school on the morning of signing day. I got it hanging up in my office. But, you know, that was a big moment for me committing to Clemson.
Okay, and then, now, as y'all may or may not know, I'm a Carolina fan. He went to Clemson, and they don't necessarily like each other come November, so that's always a fun month between the two of us. So, and so greatly for you, your record is 4-0 against Carolina. You know,
That's right. That's right.
What's the feeling that you know you can hold that? Say, I never lost.
I'm gonna tell you, Brock. Growing up, I knew nothing about the Carolina-Clemson rivalry. And, you know, again, coming from Georgia, I watched Georgia Tech, you know, Notre Dame, Southern Cal, you know, Alabama, Auburn. I would see Clemson and Carolina on TV, but didn't really understand it until I actually played my first game at Williams-Brice Stadium. It was a night game. We were 6-6, and I think South Carolina was 6-6. And back then, you had to win 7 games to go to a bowl game. So it added a little bit more steam to the rivalry because the loser was going to get put out of a bowl game by your rival. And so, you know, coming into that week, I did an interview, and one of the reporters asked me, what did the rivalry mean to me? And I told him, I'm not sure because I really didn't watch it growing up, and so it's just another game. And everybody in the room looked at me like I was crazy. But when I ran out into that Williams-Brice Stadium and to hear the chorus of boos that came down, and see, I like being the bad guy. And that didn't intimidate me because I like being the villain on the road and coming and snatching victories away from you. But just, you know, you grow up with some of these guys, you play with these guys in high school, and it adds to it the fact that I live in Columbia now, that I can put my helmet on after we beat Carolina and put my championship belt on and go shopping at Walmart like nothing happened. And being able to hold your head even higher that you never lost to your rival. So regardless of what's going on currently, I'm immune to any of that because I actually lived through the game, the 5 games that we lost in the series. But I can always say, hey, I got a trump card. I never lost to him. So, but it means a lot to not lose to your rival.
Okay, and then so you were talking about how in the beginning you didn't necessarily know, you know, about the rivalry. So as you got closer to your senior year and junior year, what did rivalry become like? Did it become like more intense for you, or did it kind of stay the same, or, you know, how did you look at it?
Well, you know, at Clemson, we got a big-time tradition where before games, the night before a game, we're sitting in the hotel, and the coaches leave the room, and the seniors come up to the front and kind of talk about that upcoming game. Well, to see the emotion and the passion come out with the seniors on that particular game as we talk about what it means to us and the seniors kind of talk about that, it took that rivalry to a different perspective. And really to look in the stands, people don't believe it, but as a player, you know, during timeouts and whatnot, you kind of scan the crowd and you see what's going on. And to see every play feels like it's 4th and goal. That's how loud it is. And people are on their feet at all times. And you can hear it echoing inside your helmet. It really means a lot. And now living in Columbia, so not only have I played through the rivalry, but now I live here in Columbia. And so now as a fan, I'm part of the rivalry. So with people that you work with people that's, you know, they see my Clemson sticker on my car and they pull up and they got a Gamecock sticker and it kind of gives you a little extra edge. And actually, when I owned a business and my business partner graduated from the University of South Carolina, believe it or not, game week, we really didn't talk to each other. It was that serious because, you know, it's just how it was. And one of my neighbors was Andre Gauze. He played wide receiver for the Gamecocks back in the early 2000s. And one time when South Carolina beat Clemson, he came and burned USC in my grass with some gas in the gas can. And so you get that kind of stuff with the rivalry that just adds to it. So it really means a lot. So, but needless to say, I got Andre back because the following year we won. And I went over there and hung a Clemson flag in front of his house. So I hope he's listening to that. But the good thing is, in this rivalry, Clemson gets more out of it because you go look at the series wins, we dominate this rivalry.
That is sadly true, but you can't deny the facts. So, and you talk about how you can hear it echoing in your helmet and people are on their feet, and I'm sure that's in both stadiums either way. Is there a particular moment in that rivalry that has stuck out to you and kind of stood with you for, till today?
It is. You go back to my senior year with everything that was on the line. Both teams had won at least 9 games going into that game. Gamecocks were on the rise. This wasn't your typical 0-16 Gamecock team. And also, it was coached by my, a guy that I grew up watching on TV, Lou Holtz, because he coached at Notre Dame. But my senior year, they were on the 1-yard line. Derek Watson was carrying the ball into the end zone. He actually fumbled the ball into the end zone, and it rolled across my foot. And I couldn't get down on the ball fast enough to secure the victory. And the Gamecocks went up. I looked on the Gamecock sideline. They dumped Gatorade on Lou Holtz. And I was really feeling bad because I felt like I let the team down. I didn't get down on the ball fast enough. You're out there and you're trying to react and things happen really bang, bang out there, and it's really fast. But to see Gatorade dumped on Lou Holtz, that really put a salt in the wound. And so I jog over to the sideline, and I'm sitting there on the bench. It's probably a minute or so left. And I'm like, man, my senior year, I can't believe the Gamecocks came back and beat us like that. So the play was actually right in front of me, and I didn't stand up. Everybody was kind of standing up watching it. And I watched Woodrow drop back to throw a pass, and he threw it to my roommate, Rod Gardner. And Rod caught it, I guess on the, 10-yard line, 20-yard line. And so we actually had an opportunity to win the game with the field goal. But our kicker that year, I believe his name was Aaron Hunt, he was a freshman. And, he was okay, but he had missed a few kicks. So I was still on the sideline, kind of in disbelief. But when he kicked that field goal to beat South Carolina, I believe it was 16-14 my senior year, that really stands out. And as I walk through the streets and people find out that I played at Clemson from 97 to 2000, first thing they say, oh, you played during the push-off, the push-off game. So, but that really stands out, that game, because it's the range of emotions that happen to go from despair to victory really stood out to me.
All right, man. I feel like I've watched these at least once before, so it's man. All right. And I was talking to you earlier. You had to experience the transition in coaches from Tommy West to Tommy Bowden in the prime of your playing time. What was that transition and experience like, having to go from one coach to another who you said had 2 completely different personalities?
Right. Coach West recruited me out of high school. So, I really love Coach West. And he was a player's coach. As a matter of fact, I bumped into Coach West about 2 years ago. He's coaching at Middle Tennessee right now. And when I bumped into him, he still remembers my parents' name to this day, my family. How's your family doing? How's your brother doing? How's your sister doing? He's that type of coach. So it was really trying times when Coach West was fired, and I really, I felt bad. And so when Coach Bowden came in, you feel bad, but you also feel optimism because Coach Bowden came in and he was just at Tulane. They went undefeated, and he brought in, you don't have time to feel bad and feel sorry for yourself. And Coach West was going to be okay. He told us, don't worry about him. He's going to be okay. But I'm going to tell you, Brock, football is a game that teaches you a ton of life skills. and just to take that skill of being able to transition during trying times. When Coach Bowden came in, you didn't have a ton of time to feel bad. But when he came in, all positions were up for grabs, and so he let you know that right away. And he really kind of turned that program and took it to the next level. But that time or that transition really prepared me for life and how to go out and be successful, even though you're experiencing some troubling times.
Okay. And now, not only were you dominant on the field, you were having to handle a heavy academic workload in the classroom. Do you have any tips to be able to balance such a heavy workload with a sport that requires as much time as football does?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, man, you have to be a master at time management. And again, that's a skill that football teaches you that I still use to this day. But you have to be a master at time management. And I would advise anybody from high school all the way up. I'm in grad school right now. Sit in the front row of your class and become really good friends with your teacher or your professor. That way, because what you don't realize, you see guys playing on TV on Saturday, but what you don't realize is when I'm flying an away game up in Virginia, we're leaving either Thursday or Friday. Sometimes you have a Thursday night game on ESPN. You could be leaving that Tuesday or Wednesday heading to that game. Well, college doesn't stop. That work is continuing to go. So I would advise you become a really good friend and with your professor so they can kind of talk and work with you during those times. But you go and you get your work and you're on a plane, and you're doing your work. It's not a vacation. You're knocking your work out. And you're balancing because you're really still studying for that team that you're getting ready to play. So it's heavy time management, prioritizing what's important. Maybe you can't go to that college party tonight because you got to win, but you got a test that Monday that you really got to get prepared for because you missed 2 days of class that previous week because you had an away game. But you just have to have your priorities straight. And, I would advise anybody still sit in that front row in the class and become really good friends with your professor.
Okay. And I mentioned earlier, y'all, that he was drafted by the Chargers in 2000. Now, Coach, that's a dream of pretty much every single football player. They all dream to get drafted, whether it's first round, third round, seventh round. They just want to have that chance. What was the feeling that you had when you knew the Chargers had drafted you?
Man, that feeling was great, Brock. You hit it on the head. That's something you've been dreaming about really since I was 4 or 5 years old and really thinking about that. And every kid has at least dreamed about that or talked about it with their friends. But I was actually sitting in my parents' living room watching the draft and the ticker tape going across the bottom of the screen. And before they draft you, they give you a phone call. So I got a chance to talk to Coach Riley, the owner of the Chargers, the defensive coordinator, my new defensive back coach. But you really, the celebration ends early because training, you have a rookie training camp that comes right away, and guys get cut during that rookie training camp. So immediately after I got drafted, our training camp was in 3 days. So believe it or not, I think I got drafted. It might have been 7 o'clock that evening. I went to the gym and just did cardio, because I needed to be in tip-top shape going out there. Because now, here it is. This is something that you worked for years, and now you got 3 days to prove you belong. And so I did not want to waste this opportunity because I was out of shape. Even though I've been training up to that point, I wanted to make sure and put a cherry on the top, make sure I was going into camp mentally and physically focused and ready to go, because I had a purpose to go and make this team.
Yes, sir. And I'm a Falcons fan, so hopefully Matty Ice will have moved on by then, and I'll have a good college career, and they need a quarterback, and they'll go ahead and take me, and I'll just have to move basically where you are. We can just flip-flop places.
There we go. As long as you get me some tickets, we good.
I'll try my best.
Yeah.
Now, you had the opportunity to play with some great players that are definitely Hall of Famers, and one that was at your position was Rodney Harrison, who is considered one of the greatest safeties of all time. What was it like to play alongside him?
I'm going to tell you, Brock, playing alongside Rodney Harrison, coming out of college as a college player, you don't really have an understanding of what it means to be a professional football player on and off the field. And to get a chance to learn from one of the greatest of all time, to really teach you how to study for an opponent, to really teach you how to recover your body and take care of your body off the field, and really teach you how to be a true professional. And I'm going to tell you this, Brock, hands down, he is one of the hardest hitters I've ever seen in my life, and just no disregard for his body. You know, a player like Rodney really couldn't play in today's game because of the safety things that they're putting in place. But just to get a chance to watch him up close and personal, and like you said, a Hall of Famer, Junior Seau, getting a chance to watch Junior Seau up close, and again, learning from these guys how to be a true professional. Taking that skill that they taught me about being a professional and applying it to after football, to being a true professional when I owned a business, being a true professional when I was in pharmaceutical sales, and now a teacher in the classroom. I'm still applying those skills to everywhere I go, trying to be the best and have that edge on competition. So I figured, man, I almost got a doctorate degree watching these guys to see how I can be the best.
Yes, sir. And not only did you have guys on the defensive side of the football, you had some Hall of Famers on the offensive side of the football, like Drew Brees and LaDainian Tomlinson. And Drew Brees is still playing now with the Saints,
right.
And I really wish they would have gone to the Super Bowl, man. I would have loved to see that. Brees versus Brady, that would sold so many tickets. But
right.
What was it like you played on the same field as them, and just like everybody in general, Harrison, Seau, Tomlinson, Brees, just like all of these guys, some of the greatest at their position.
Yeah, back then, you knew Drew Brees was going to have a great career. But now, like you said, he's one of the greatest of all time. Same thing with LaDainian. But the thing that you see, Brock, out of those guys that's consistent, they practice the way they play. And you hear that in high school, and people think it's uncool to hustle and work hard. But those guys, although they were first ballot Hall of Famers, those guys practice with an intensity like they were at the end of the bench trying to make the team. And they brought that every day. And then not only did I get a chance to play against those guys, but some of the greatest to ever play. My first game we played against the Redskins, and you look out there on the field and Deion Sanders is out there. Bruce Smith is out there. Terrell Owens, we played the 49ers when Jerry Rice was there, and then he moved over to Oakland. But to get a chance to play against these guys, the common factor that I saw is it didn't matter what day it was, if it was 100 degrees or it was 30 degrees. They brought an intensity to the practice field that was unmatched. And you see why they're Hall of Famers, because of how hard they work and prepare to get ready for Sundays.
Yes, sir. Now, let's move on to after football. And as I said, you are a teacher up at Lake Carolina now. When did you decide, I want to be a teacher, and what exactly draws you to teaching? Because my mom is a teacher, so,
Right. I'm going to be honest, Brock. When I grew up, I really looked up and admired my older brother. And I tell people this story all the time. If my brother would have chose to be a doctor, I would have been a doctor. If he would have chose to be a lawyer, I would have been a lawyer. But my brother majored in elementary education, and so I said that's what I'm going to major in. And so, but being in the classroom, the thing that draws me there is working with the youth and guiding them and knowing that you're going to have an impact. Everybody that's listening to this podcast, they can think back and they have one or two teachers that really made a strong impact. No matter how old you are, you can be 90 years old. You can think back to one or two teachers that really had a strong impact on you. And that's why I wanted to really have an impact that leaves a long-lasting legacy. Long after you leave this earth, people still think of you fondly because of the impact that you had on their life. So I wanted to make sure that I did that, and that's a profession that's respectable, and you can go in and have that impact on the youth and also your community.
Okay. And you used to be my Pop Warner head coach. I used to be Marcus Lattimore in your eyes, even though I played pretty much everywhere. I didn't play just running back. I played pretty much everywhere. Why do you want to be all of a sudden a coach, and specifically at an organization called Gamecock Youth, even though it's quite ironic?
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you where it all started. This is when I was still playing professional. I came back home to Georgia, and I was watching. I got a couple of nephews now, but I went out to watch him practice. And I went out there, and I had my hat pulled down real low. Nobody knew who I was, and I just kind of sat in the corner. And I was watching the technique that they were teaching out there, and they wasn't really teaching technique. It wasn't really teaching proper, stance and different things like that. And my nephew come home, and I saw some of the things that he was learning, and I was telling him that wasn't, correct. And so to really go back, not that the Gamecocks wasn't doing it, but I wanted to really give back because, one, I wanted to make sure that I passed down what I knew to the youth, giving back. And then, two, I just like giving back, and people gave back to me. And we had a wide receiver played at South Carolina State. His name was Downtown Charlie Brown. He came out, played for the Redskins for a long time. But he came out and volunteered at my high school, Stone Mountain. And he would work with me after practice one-on-one on technique and discipline and different things like that. And so, and then also we had the Falcons sponsored my high school coming out. So Deion Sanders, you would see him at a game. He wouldn't come out and talk to you, but you would see him at the games and different things like that. So I just really wanted to give back to the youth. And as far as the Gamecocks, I worked with a guy, like I told you, Malcolm Presley. We own Health Plus together. And he asked me to come out and coach because he had a son. And so I ended up coming out and fell in love and been coaching ever since, man. So really, I'm in love with the game of football, and anytime I can pass that knowledge and that love on to another generation, hopefully that's what I can do.
Yes, sir. Now, let's end this off with just what piece of advice would you give any of today's football players, whether it's they're in Pop Warner, they're in Flag, they're in high school, middle school, just what piece of advice would you give them overall?
Yeah, the piece of advice I would give is, study and learn your craft, because I was shocked at the size of the playbook when I made it to the NFL. But, today's players are so much more athletic than we were. Just being honest, I look back, I go to even high school games, and you see how big and fast these guys are and how athletic they are. But one of the things the advice I want to give is how determined are these players. I was so determined to make the Chargers roster. The night before our last day of that rookie camp, I snuck out of the hotel, caught a cab down to the local FedEx, copied that whole playbook. It cost me, I think it was $120 to copy that playbook, go back to the hotel, sneak back in the window, and I took that playbook home to study it. So when I got back, I had an edge on my competition because you had 8 safeties that was competing for one spot. You knew nobody was going to take Rodney Harrison's spot. We had another guy named Jason Perry, and we had another guy named Rogers Beckett. Those spots were solidified, but it was one spot that 8 different safeties were competing for. And so my advice is, how hungry and determined are you to be successful? And don't be content with just being the best player on your team, because truly you're going to have a guy out in California that's eventually going to be competing for your spot. You're going to have a guy down in Texas, a guy up in Ohio that's going to be competing for your spot. And that skill set will not only take you to compete with football, but after you're done with football and you go compete in a global market for a job, you're going to have people from all over the world competing for that job. And how determined are you to be the best? Now, when I say determined to be the best, I'm not saying go do anything dirty to get an edge on people, but I want to be the best I can be. So if I get beat out for that position, I know deep down that I tried my best and that they beat me. I didn't not prepare and they beat me, but I prepared to be my best and they beat me. So if any advice is that, just make sure you're hungry and you're determined. I see a lot of the guys, and you ask them, what do you want to do? I want to play in the NFL. Oh, okay, what position do you play? I don't know. Who's your favorite player? I'm not sure. And so, really understand your craft, study the game, understand down and distance, understand, what that truly means. And that's the type of edge that's going to help you to be successful.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Coach, once again for being on. Love to have you anytime. You're welcome back anytime, whenever. Just hit me up and we'll make something happen.
Hey, that sounds like a plan, Brock. I really appreciate you having me on.
Anytime, Coach.
Once again, guys, shout out to Coach Rob for coming on to the show, man. You're always welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day, as I know you're trying to finish up grad school. Hope you do well on that. Guys, make sure you follow him on his social medias. I will link those down below. Let him know I sent you. Now, I'm going to be trying to still upload these a lot. School is coming up within the next week. However, I can say that likely my next podcast, we might start bringing in some teammates of mine, so we're going to see how that works. And make sure y'all follow my social medias as well. I will link them all down in the description below. And I will see you guys next time. Peace out.
Through the wastelands, through the highways.